There we go. Welcome everybody to the Comic Arts Workshop. We've been doing this since 2017, and we are now beginning to have guests come back after like 2 or 3 years, right? And so Jamar is one of those. We had him on. I'm not sure if I guess it was during the pandemic already, right?
Was it? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Uh,
But you know what? Actually, I was wondering about that today. Like, how did you and I connect? And I remembered you came to Diversity Comic Con.
And we became
Couldn't
best
remember.
friends.
Yeah, I couldn't remember how you came to Diversity Comic Con. So I did a quick email search, and Sandra Nguyen emailed me and said, "I am Jamar's assistant, and he would like to attend Diversity Comic Con. And here's a link to his stuff."
hmm
And I said, "Wow, we got to get this guy in there." So,
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Ramon, because yeah, sometimes when I talk about kind of like the business of what we do,
uh-huh.
and one uh, flag I like to plant in the ground is the flag of getting help, or even like being able to delegate to people, which
Right.
sounds very lofty and something that, like, somebody who's just like, man, I can't even, do I pay my water bill or do I pay the electric bill this month? And I totally know how that works. How you could even think about those things, and I think a lot of times we shortchange ourselves, especially regards to kind of like how we can use our resources. So I've had an assistant, or I've had help, or I've had people kind of in my mix for a long time, and it kind of makes you look a little bigger than you might be at that point.
I
You
hear
know,
you. I hear you. I mean, I used to run a business, and you wanted to make project, a certain image that would make your clients feel more confident about you.
right, right. And I don't necessarily subscribe all the time to fake it till you make it, because I don't really think I'm faking it.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to, like, I don't know, present myself in a maybe in a higher light than most people would
that's
think I
completely
have.
understandable.
Yeah,
I use my kids all the time. I mean,
sure.
I had my daughter's a pretty good artist, so I let her color things once in a while.
hmm
And my son is a pretty smart guy, and I get him to do research or even do some writing. So I
Yeah.
think that, in fact, in the graphic novel that I just put out, he did all the research.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And he's credited on that front, and he doesn't care. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
just yeah,
yeah. Like, they grew up with a dad who's a comic book creator, and so
insecure.
Yeah, I
so
love it.
they are used to that. They used to love it though when we'd go to Comic Cons when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
They would wander around they made friends with the other kids of creators, and they would wander around the Comic Con in like a pack, like a gang. And they'd be doing this, they'd be, you know, walking around. Now they outgrew. Now they only want to go to a New York Comic Con. That's the only one they want to go to now. They don't care about all the other cons.
Oh, well, I mean, that's a huge con, so I could see why you want to pick that one.
Right.
Yeah.
My only regret when you came to Diversity Comic Con, it's my regret with a lot of things. I didn't get to like really sit down and talk to you or a lot of people.
Yeah.
And in fact, those first two live Comic Cons, I realized that we didn't even record the panels, and you
Yeah.
were in one of the panels.
Yeah, it was a good panel too.
Yeah, those were really good panels. I mean, I would dart in and listen in, and they were really good. I just wish that I had the resources to have it recorded, right? So even at
Yeah.
least the audio, but there were so many things I was juggling back then.
Yeah. And just to give you some credit, or give you your flowers, Ramon. Running anything is hard. And as an attendee of things, or say, I just paid my ticket and I went to the thing, whatever the thing is.
Well,
And
I'm glad you came.
the first thing people do is they complain about the thing they just went to. You know what I mean? Like, oh, the carpet's not spongy enough, or they spell my name wrong, or but there's usually like a really small group of people trying to make this thing, not fall apart while we're in it. So I appreciate you, and
Well, I appreciate
anybody
you.
that makes
I'm
this.
glad you came, and you came just 1 year, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just came, and I was self-publishing then. I had my self-published Leon, Protector of the Playground, at DiversityCon. That was before the Scholastic stuff.
Now that's a great segue, but I just realized we didn't properly do an introduction.
Okay.
So everybody, this is Jamar Nicholas. He publishes a book called Leon. Now the latest one is, well, the latest one was Leon the Extraordinary, and then there's a new one,
Yeah.
Leon. What is it? Best friends or best enemies?
Worst Friends Forever.
Worst friends forever.
Yeah, and that'll be out in October.
And the
Through
last time Jamar was here, we talked a little bit about how he went from trying to break into regular mainstream comics or doing indie comics to doing children's comics because it made more sense if you wanted to reach a wider audience, right?
Yeah, yeah. So a really interesting thing about a little bit of my backstory, just to fill in some gaps here, is I've been in the comic industry since '97, something like that. We're getting old, and I started off self-publishing. I self-published floppy single issue comics of my own stuff, and from there I learned a lot in a really at a fast clip. Then time moved on. The end of the '90s happened, and then I wound up doing web comics, and that was kind of like early web comics, like pre webtoons, pre all of these really cool portals, or even pre interest in web comics, where I probably got my first big kind of notoriety. I did a web comic for Kevin Smith, the filmmaker, on one of his web portals.
Detective Boogaloo, I think it
Yeah, Detective Boogaloo, Hip Hop Cop, which ran later on. It turned into a newspaper strip, and it ran in the Metro, in New York, in Boston, and Philly concurrently, and that was a really nice thing. So I've kind of had my hands in different pies over the years, and I've never really stuck to just like one vessel. Like I've always tried to just kind of find the next kind of slipstream to slide in on, and it's pretty wild. Almost 20 years ago, I illustrated a series of graphic novels for Tokyo Pop, uh, called The Gross Adventures, and they were kind of like gateway manga chapter books. They kind of had a young person's line. I can't remember. There were a couple of other books under there, about these two kids that would like go on adventures and just like and fart. And it was pretty gross, but
Well,
it's like it's a
I
kid's
think it's a
book.
it's a testament to your longevity that you're able to adapt to
Yeah,
different formats, different
yeah,
genres,
yeah.
and different markets, So I think you have to, this is not an easy business, right?
No, no, it isn't. And I see a lot of people who kind of have one idea, and no, there's nothing wrong with that. But I
That's
see
fine.
people
Yeah,
have
exactly.
they have one idea, and then they just kind of like almost like choke it out because they don't want to let it go, or maybe put it down and try something else and come back to it. And kind of everything rides or dies on that one thing. And sometimes people leave the industry really bitter if that thing doesn't work. So let me finish my thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I kind of got a bug for doing kids stuff from that Tokyo Pop gig. I don't think I ever had so much fun working on a project before, which kind of brings Leon back up, because kind of created this character when I was doing my self-published work, and I just started to kind of turn him around and uh, plant seeds with it, and then that's where Leon Protector the Playground came from. The market had changed. We were in the middle of a hyper violent comic era. Like Kick Ass was popular, and I think the Watchmen movie was out, and everything was just like bloody chiclet teeth and hockey sticks, and it was a lot. It was just like visually a lot, and not that I planned it like this, but it was almost kind of like a flip, like a mirror reversal of what was happening out in the
You're offering
landscape.
an alternative.
Yeah, and I didn't plan it that way. It just was timing. So it kind of caught on. It won a couple of awards. It won the Dwayne McDuffie Award for Diversity in 2018. I saw light at the end of the tunnel, and I was like, I gotta get this out into the world, and that's where Scholastic comes in. So that was a bridge version of my career.
So a confession, on my part, a lot of the questions tonight are going to be because I'm going down the same path as Jamar.
Mhm.
So these are going to be very selfish questions. I'm going to be asking questions that I want to know. Of
Yeah.
course, you'll get a chance to ask questions too from the audience. But so tell me about the self-publishing. What does that mean when you said you were self-publishing? Were you printing books? You know, what kind of print runs were you doing? How are you distributing them? How are you marketing them?
Okay, so let's put on our time machine hats for a minute, and we're going to go back to 97,
I crank
96.
up the time machine.
Yeah, there you go. Crank it up. 96, 97, where, without being corny, like the internet wasn't what it is now. There were like message boards, or maybe even like internet services like AOL and Prodigy and Usenet and things like that. So it wasn't the dark ages, but it definitely wasn't search engine world. So a lot of the information that I found out about how to self-publish, like I old school went to the library, you know what I mean? Or you go to the bookstore and just find books on marketing. There weren't a lot of how to make comic book things. So the self-publishing just kind of came from trial and error, asking a lot of questions to different people who
And this is
see,
before digital printing and print on demand, right?
yeah, before all of that stuff. Uh, I was really entrenched in kind of like the indie comic scene, and I kind of heard about SPX, the Small Press Expo, which had just really gotten started the last couple of years in Bethesda, Maryland. And that was my first pilgrimage. Like, I think I need to go to this thing and figure out what these people are doing. Um, and, after just doing a lot of research and also being into mini comics and stuff, I put this plan together and I did my first print run of the Jamar Chronicles #1, and it might have been 1,000, 2,000 books, something like that.
It's a
But it
lot.
was it was a lot, and it was also from a legit printer. I had a connection in Texas to a printer who did, I forget what you call them, like drum press, like
Offset.
drums. Yeah, like they run the newspaper circulars or the penny
Oh, okay,
savers.
okay, yeah.
And at this point, if you could make a really good comic that actually looked like a comic book with the side, with the side saddle stitching
Fine.
and everything, somebody had to know how to do it. Like you just gonna say, "Hey, I'd like to make 1,000 comic books." They go, "We don't. I don't know how to print that. Do you have an example that I can maybe pull apart and figure it out?" That's how new this stuff was. So I found this guy that took a chance on me. He's like, "This is the first comic book I've ever printed. I don't know if I'm ever going to do anymore." And it was even to the point where I took all my original comic pages and I mailed them to Texas, and he shot films,
Wow.
and there's
Shot
plates.
film?
He shot film.
Oh
It's
my God.
wild, right? And it's like it does not work like that
Was
anymore.
this color?
Well, I had a color cover, and I have the color keys somewhere in a drawer here.
Okay,
This
okay,
the
got it.
color separations for the cover, and the interior was black and white, and I had a lot of halftones that I probably learned that I did that all wrong because I don't know what that stuff, how that worked once you print it. And I paid the guy, got a bunch of cases of comics to my apartment, and then I had no idea how to sell them. So I was halfway there. So maybe the distribution part about this, Ramon, is that I had done enough homework that I knew about the Diamond catalog, the previous catalog in Diamond, and how if you were going to get in the comic shops, you had to have an account with Diamond, and you get, like, they'll call them like a, a brand manager, or like everybody who had like an A through Z self-publishing title or a company name got sourced into the previews catalog, the
Right,
big
yeah.
phone book at the comic shop that comes out like 3 or 4 months before it hits the stores. And I found out quickly, and things started to change for the worse after I got in, that they could be the arbiter if your book ever sees the light of day, because they say no all the time. And with my story, I never got into Diamond. I never got into previews. I had a brand manager. Steve Leaf was a sweetheart, but he was just like, "Yeah, we don't think we can sell this." So I was just like, "Well, now what do I do?" And I just figured out the rest. Like, I just did a lot of sweetheart sales, which is kind of an old school term for like selling comics to your family. You
Right.
know,
But this
hey,
is
what?
Jamar Chronicles. By the time you self-published Leon,
No,
what was
this
the
is later.
situation? What was the situation there?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll do a time jump. So now, when I self-published Leon, the landscape had changed dramatically. We did a Kickstarter for that. Kickstarter didn't exist in 1997, but also even with that, we did a Kickstarter at the very beginning of Kickstarter, where it wasn't on the public consciousness yet. I spent half of our campaign trying to tell people what Kickstarter was. Remember that period of time where people were like, "Well, wait a minute, you want my credit card? I'm not giving you my
Yeah.
credit card." Remember that? Now everybody just like puts their watch up to things. But anyway, like I spent more time trying to explain to people, like, no, no, I'm not trying to steal from you. I'm going to give you your stuff. You just gotta see this through. And we had a very well. I was part of kind of like a anthology Kickstarter with my good buddies, John Gallagher, who now does Max Meow at Random House, and Rich Faber. We were going to put out a series of graphic novels, and they all had theirs, and I had mine. So uh, after everything got fulfilled, at this point, we got them printed on demand by Ingram Spark, which is kind of like facilitated through uh is it wait a minute, is it Amazon? I kind of just like I just had a little like a
Well,
brainstorm.
Ingram Spark distributes, you post something on or you print something from Ingram, and they automatically put it on Amazon and
Right,
DN.
right. That's what it is. So it's kind of like a clear channel that kind of puts your stuff in front of everybody, but you still have to do a lot of legwork. Like I needed an ISBN number packet. I had to get all these things kind of like dotted and crossed before I could just give them this thing and it would happen. But they did a lot of the legwork. And then I could just say, print some for myself, let Amazon do their thing. If somebody ordered a Leon off of Amazon, they just make the book and send it to them. And this is a while ago. So this technology's been around for a while. Now it's just gotten even better. So that was kind of like the end of my self-publishing story. And after that, I just realized that there's only so much space that I could do myself to kind of like travel and get this stuff in front of people doing kind of like hand to hand sales.
So
So,
you had this book on through Ingram. So it was on available on Amazon. You could order your own
mhm,
prints wholesale.
mhm. Hardcover and softcover.
Why? What went into the decision to do a hardcover?
Just as I thought about libraries because libraries don't want soft covers generally. Like there's even a binding, I think they call it turtle binding, when they kind of like double bind and kind of put that laminate, that shellac over a book to go in the libraries. Because kids will just destroy a
Right.
paperback. So if they have their druthers, they'd rather have hard covers. And plus, I just thought having hard covers made sense, and you can charge more for them. So, we did both. They both need their own separate ISBN. You can't share an ISBN number with a hardcover and a softcover. They're two totally separate objects.
Got it.
So, right. So, we had that and put that out into the world, and they did pretty well.
So now you have the two books on, on Ingram. It's available online.
Mhm.
How do you promote it to bookstores, libraries, and schools?
That's where we go back to the kind of the Johnny Appleseed approach. It's just from a lot of my contacts for being in comics so long and having a lot of really great relationships with a lot of comic book shops across the country. A lot of them were just like a lot of emails. Hey, can I come by and can I get you for 10 orders, or all that kind of stuff. And it's doable. There's a lot of bookkeeping. Sometimes it almost feels like it's not worth it because you're chasing somebody for a consignment order. Hey, listen, I have this great book. I think your constituents would love it. Yeah, I'll try five, and then maybe up 5 months later, they say, "Oh, we sold two. You can have the other three back. Here's your check for $10." So it's kind of a juggle to try to stay afloat doing it like that with
So you were
consignment.
going in person to these shops.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was a lot of heavy lugging. A lot of it was because I'm in Philly. A lot of it was kind of like on the East Coast or just like inside the I-95 corridor. I had a lot of contacts in Philly and Delaware and Maryland, and I was all over there, and then I had some stuff in New York, and anything outside of there was kind of like, I'm just going to pack this stuff up and send it and hope you get it. It's still an attainable goal, but there's a lot of bookkeeping and just kind of like trust and Hail Marys you throw up when you're trying to get your books out like that.
I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to open it up to the audience.
Hmm.
Now, how did you make the transition from self-publishing to traditional publishing? How did that happen?
Well, there was a book that I adapted in between, like before all this Leon stuff. There's a book called Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun: A Personal History of Violence, where I adapted educator Jeffrey Canada's memoirs, and that was 2009. 2008, I was working on it. 2009, 2010, it came out. And this is one of my favorite stories. I might have told you this one before. So, and I hope you guys can humor me with this. So, from word of mouth, I get this gig. I get vetted by Jeff Canada himself. There's a kind of an audition, as he needed somebody to transform his memoirs into a graphic novel. It's still kind of fresh. Graphic novels aren't as big as they are now. And even I remember the touch point at that time was the publisher says, "Hey, Fun Home's on the New York Times bestseller list. Can you give us a Fun Home?" All right. And I'm like, well, I don't think it's that easy. I'll do what I can. But people just saw kind of like this ceiling and thought like,
Right.
oh, well, we need one of these. So if we do one of these, we'll get there. So, not to talk about promotion or lack of promotion or what they said they do versus what they thought I would do. It had modest success, I'll say it like that. It raised my profile, but I don't think it did what they wanted it to do. So anyway, I made this deal. I took the deal. I signed whatever they put in front of me because I didn't have a choice. It was a take it or leave it. And you'll see a lot with a lot of deals you make. It's kind of like you don't really have the space to put red lines through stuff or say, hey, I'm going to show this to my lawyer. Go ahead and show it to your lawyer, but we're not going to listen to your lawyer. There's a lot of static that happens that you kind of
Right.
just think is, or even the worst thing is you don't read it at all and you just sign it. And that's usually where people have a lot of, elephant skeletons buried in their career. But, so it was a take or leave it deal. I took it. My editor at the end of my project where I turned in the manuscript, everything was done. She called me and said, "This is going to be the last time you hear from me." Just after this project was completed, I decided I don't want to be in this business anymore. I'm going to quit traditional publishing and I'm going to go into book law and I'm going to become a lawyer. And all I can say to you is get an agent and have a nice life. She hung up the phone. I never heard from her again. So off the strength of that, I was just like, oh, I think I need an agent. I need a literary agent. And in my instance, and this is usually what hangs everybody up. One of the hardest things to do is find a literary agent. It's almost like needle in a haystack or impossible. Or I know people who are in a query hamster wheel for years. In my case, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to my agent, but I like to always preface that by saying, even though I had that meeting, it still wasn't a slam dunk. There's kind of like, it's almost like dating, like there's a relationship that has to happen. Am I kind of presenting myself in, do I have the kind of stuff that you want? Are you the person that should be representing me? Again, you just don't say yes to everything, and they don't have to say yes to you. And my agent is kind of notorious for like not saying yes to a lot of things. So it all kind of worked out, and my agent and I have been together for like maybe 10 years before we got
Same
Leon.
agent?
So yeah, same agent. And they're very patient. Once you're in there and they understand that this is all going to happen under your power, so it doesn't do them any good to kind of rush you or press you or kind of lead you in directions that you may not want to go. How about this? Want to try this? How about a zombie western? It's like, hey, listen, how are you feeling about whatever in the world right now? Why don't you write up a synopsis and let's see what that looks like. And there's a lot of back and forth and just kind of like hammering out the sword, so to speak. And that happened with Leon. The Protector of the Playground work that I did it for the Kickstarter. I finished it. It was now out in the world, and I tried to pitch him that, and he's just like, "Oh, well, it's done already." It's almost like the horse is out of the barn situation. And it's something I've learned over the years, and maybe this could be a nice piece of advice. Coming from comic book world, we do things, we finish them, we give them to you. So the comic book creator conceit is, well, I did this thing, I just need somebody to publish it for me. Here's my thing. And generally in traditional publishing, the conversation starts way before it's finished. It starts at the beginning or even the germination of the idea. So my finished Leon thing was kind of penetrable at that point. Well, it's done. We can't do anything with it now. So it kind of went and did the rounds, and I got a lot of, oh well, oh, we love Jamar's work, or oh, we're familiar with him, or this sounds really cool, but let's see what he has the next time, or pitch us the next time. So I was on the highway. It wasn't landing yet. So the time came where I did another Leon pitch. So it wasn't like a repackaging, or it wasn't kind of like a remix or a mashup of what I did before. I just kind of continued this universe.
So
And
the first book was basically in their eyes unpublishable because you already did it.
yeah, like I did it already. Now I hear all the time that there's people who kind of get deals, kind of like they kind of like retroactively publish stuff that's been published already. Like I can even think of like
And
Doug
repackage it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like Doug TenNapel's like library was at Scholastic, and it's kind of like, oh, Tommy Source Rex, and
Bone
you
was
know,
republished.
yeah, yeah, things like that. But and not that I know anything about, I also know that even with those things, there's still tweaks being made.
All right.
Nobody just takes this thing and goes, great, thanks, here's your check. There's kind of like, well, hey, we don't really think that kids would glom onto this character who has a cigar hanging out of his mouth. Can you take the cigar out? Right. And that may, butt up against your creative, your vision. Like, well, I'm not doing that. Well, then we might be at an impasse, you know. So there are some parts of that where things might have to be like dialed up or down, or maybe some things are changed. But I don't think there's ever been a, hey, great, this is fine, we won't touch it, when something gets repackaged or picked up by a publisher from another source. I hope that answers your question, Ramon.
Well, I do have a follow-up. So at some point, the press release went out that you signed like a 3 or a 5 book deal with Scholastic, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So when you signed that deal, was that for more Leon books, and was that based on the strength of the self-published book? Like what was the process, or what were the steps that led you to that Scholastic deal for, I'm assuming, Leon books,
Hmm.
despite the fact that you already self-published for the first one?
So the structure of my deal with Scholastic is specifically for Leon books. So, and I know other people have things that are a little more loosey goosey, where it might be, for 2 books and an unannounced title, or, a memoir and 3 other things, or, something like that. But mine was specifically laid out for 3 books in the series featuring Leon. Now, all of that kind of came out on the negotiation table. What was great about that part of the process, which is really hair raising, it is very nail biting, is that the agent is going to take your kind of, your query and put it out into the ocean and see who bites on it.
It was a
You know.
Leon query?
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm. So when it all kind of came down to the wire, there was an auction for this series. at four, maybe five publishing houses. And then there were a couple of rounds of, offers. There were some phone calls from publishers where they were kind of like woo me and wine and dine me a little bit. We really love this. We love this manuscript. We'd love if you were here at our company. Don't let my 8-year-old son down. He loves this. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like applying pressure to you, but it's
This,
like good problems pressure. You know what I'm saying?
this query that you sent, was this for Leon the Extraordinaire or the first book, and then they just decided let's do a second book instead?
So protected in this is kind of it's not complicated, it's confusing. So protected the playground, just act like that doesn't even exist right now. So protected the playground wasn't part of this deal. It was about a brand new, fresh set of books. And it's like off the strength of the universe I already created, and just the sales on that stuff and the accolades I got from it, and even the strength of my synopsis and my sample pages for this new thing, for the extraordinary. They got really excited about what the future could hold for something like Leon. So that's where all of that kind of came from. And part of my query was kind of like, well, what do you see this looking like? Well, I have an idea for 3 books. Here are really vague synopsi of what that could look like, and here are some loose titles. And it's almost like making like an animation pitch or something like that. What are your elevator pitches for this series? There's character designs. I think I did 50 pages of finished art for the sample, and that kind of messes people up, because you're like, what, 50? Like it's a graphic novel. I think 50 is kind of outrageous, but it's fair at the same time. Because maybe not in my case, but when you're working with new people, they don't know what you're capable of until you do it, right? So I think sometimes there are people who may get to that point and they get caught up on like they trip up the stairs, so to speak. All right, well, we need 50 pages in a synopsis and character turnarounds, and then they just disappear, or just even the pressure of that is just like too great. And they just, they melt. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So I kind of just like I delivered what the agent asked for, and then he sent it out, and he got some nibbles back, and that's where the offers begin. So the process takes a while. It maybe took a month or something, and then at the end of everything, we all negotiated what everything looked like. I weighed things against other things, and I considered my options very heavily, and I chose Scholastic to go with. So also, I'm very proud that it was my decision. No one bought me. If you want to think of it like that, like
Nice.
like bidding on screwdrivers with a military
Right.
contract or something. I mean, I have to go to the lowest bidder or something like that. Like I said, this is where I want to go. So
Now, at that point, we're in, after you sign the contract, does that mean that had you already pretty much stopped like promoting and trying to sell Leon the first book?
yeah, it kind of ran its course, and also there were some parts where, to offset brand confusion, it kind of made sense for me to kind of like turn the heat off on Protected the Playground, because now I'm doing these new things.
Got it.
And I know to some people that sounds confusing, like, well, you should be able to sell your thing and do the other thing as this. But the longer I've been in this world, I'm learning about how easy it is to confuse people. A little later into my deal, and this kind of just happened with the last book that's coming out. I originally had another title for it, and then it got changed, and it got changed because I got very polite conversations with marketing and sales who said, we think it might be a good idea to change the title of this book, right? So one might say, depending on who you ask, they can't tell you what to do. It's your thing. Da, da, da. But one of the things that I've also learned and embraced about this is you're very much part of a team, even though you're like, I guess, the quarterback or however you want
Right.
to say it. There's still people on the sidelines looking at the playbook,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not all me in big sunglasses and a cape, just like barking orders at people. You know what I mean? So I try to be very easy to work with. I have hills that I plant my feet into, and I stand my ground on certain things. But a lot of things are just like, oh well, why do you feel that way? Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, sure, let's change it. You know what I'm saying? So I think being easy to work with is another part of this
Yeah.
stuff. Um, and really, it came down to the cadence of the title of this book feels really close to the last book. So just imagine you're in Target with your kid, and your kid is like, "Ooh, I want Leon to blah blah blah." Well, we got that one already.
I see.
You know what I mean? Because even just like the da, 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 or the da, da,
Right,
da, da,
right.
da, so
They really want to make differentiate between that book and this book. So
right, right. So it's all, I mean, it's all kind of like marketing savvy if you think
yeah,
about it, not somebody saying that, it's wrong, but just like, at the end of the day, it could be whatever you want it to be, but these are our reasons for saying these things to you. And I think they weigh all those conversations very heavily. Just being in the space. I don't think anybody wants to make the phone call to Jamar to tell him, you know what I'm saying? Just think about it from their point of view. It's like, are you sure? Okay, call them. You know what I'm saying? So I, try to weigh that also.
have you seen American Fiction?
Yeah, I just saw American I got the poster for my movie theater. I love that movie so much. I don't know what I did with it. It's fantastic. It is
It reminds
just
me of that, when he changed the title and stuff. But anyways, let's open it up to people who want to ask questions. So anybody, so Jill's raising her hand. So go ahead, Jill.
Hey Jill.
Hey, Jamar, this has been fascinating. It still is fascinating.
Yeah.
I like the image of you at the at the auction for your the what am I trying to say?
Like
Yes,
the bidding war thing.
bidding war. That's it.
Yeah.
I assume you're sitting there with cognac and champagne, and they're just oh please, please take us. Um,
No,
can
Some guy
what
goes
was it?
25,
yeah,
2500, 2500.
Well,
yeah.
wait, but Jill, before you ask your question, one of the things is also that I'm kind of like a COVID hire. So all of this happened during the pandemic.
Oh
So
wow.
a lot of it was just phone calls.
No fancy restaurants then.
No,
Oh,
no, yeah, no
heck.
whining and dining, no, coming back to Philly on this train with giant tote bags full of books.
Man,
So, but I'm sorry, I'm going to throw you off.
no,
What
that's
me to
okay.
listen?
Can you say anything about whether why Scholastic was the best choice without, I'm sure outing everybody else publicly, but what made you say, yeah, these guys?
So, Jill, this will be interesting, and I know it kind of flies against the face of a lot of things in our world, but it wasn't the money, right? You think about the nostalgic resonance of Scholastic and what it has on American culture. Everybody has some sort of recollection of a Scholastic memory. Either it's the book fair, or it's highlights, or the bookmobile, or your Clifford plush, or you being in your school buying a Lamborghini poster and a slap bracelet. Just that nostalgia is really really heavy.
Hmm.
And just also the graphics imprint where I'm on, which that's kind of like, it's like, I don't know, like Geffen Records or something in music. It's just like it's a really giant imprint. Bones there, Dave Pilkey's there, Raina Teglemeyer's there, Kazuo Kibuishi's there. Um, it's like I feel like I struck gold. Why would I want to go anywhere else? And just the reach of Scholastic worldwide is really hard to you know not want to be attracted to. I just want kids to get my books as easy as possible. And I felt like the best vessel for that was Scholastic.
That's great. Any toys to go along with it? Any slap bracelet?
Well, you know what? We're working on that. And maybe a really interesting side note is that I'm doing middle grade graphic novels, and that's a really weird market for that kind of stuff. If I was skewing younger, of course I'd have like a dog man plush, or like this really cute little thing that goes with the book. But, 10, 11, 9, 10, 11-year-olds aren't really into that stuff because they're trying to be older than they are.
Yeah.
And unless it's a really cool t-shirt or something like that, it might be easier. So, I want a toy. I don't
Mhm.
know if any kids want toys. But those things are, always on the table. And one of the cool parts about all this stuff is I own all the rights
Hmm.
to Leon. So if somebody wants to make bed sheets or tube socks or whatever, we have those conversations with me.
Does anybody say to you, what do you mean you're going to keep the rights? How does that conversation happen?
Well, a lot of that's my agent, you know what I mean? And just, being in company with a really well established and smart house, they have relationships with these guys already. You know what I mean? My agent has said several times, like, "Oh, I have another client over there," or
Mm.
my client just did this over there, and I have somebody over there. So there's almost like they kind of know the inner workings of how these guys do business. So maybe you get a better deal than somebody else because they got screwed on something in the past. Hey, what this says on page 209, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this instead, and they push it back across the table. So um, I don't really remember at this point. Uh, I don't think there was ever a point where I didn't have control of my rights, but I'm sure if I was unagented, that's what they call it in the business, they would have, not to say they would, but I think it's easy to just say, well, this person walked into this room and they weren't ready.
Yeah.
You go in to face the dragon, but you forgot to put your armor on. You might get cooked. That's not the dragon's fault. You know what I'm saying? So, that might sound kind of like pro corporate, but it's kind of like you have to know what you're getting into. And, you just can't blame the evil empire on you not being prepared.
Yeah, we actually hear that a lot when we go to panels and listen to agents talk. You're like, wow, you guys would keep us safe. There aren't enough of you to keep all of us safe.
Yeah,
I guess that leads me to another question, if I may.
sure.
When you pitch something to your agent, I imagine that's maybe a conversation and some sketches, and that's before the pitch to the publisher. Like, what
Mhm.
what do those two things look like?
So one thing that I learned over time, and I think every agent is different. Most literary agents have kind of like a focus, or even their own interest list. Like there are a lot of them that won't take YA, or they're not interested in cookbooks or sports memoirs, but they really like strong protagonist led middle grade books, or they love a really great horror book. You know what I mean? So kind of even placing your content in front of the right agent is probably going to make that relationship work better. But 9 times out of 10, it would be something like, "Hey, I have this great idea. All right, well, what is it? So, all right, just hear me out. What if this, and then this?" It's like, what else you got? You know what I mean? It's not. Yes, Jamar, that's fantastic. Write it up. Well, there's always kind of like a dance or back and forth. So, what if they are interested? There may be something like, well, you know what, write something up, like write a synopsis up, and I'll take it home and read it for a couple of weeks, and I'll get back to you. So there's a lot of cooking in the kitchen between your editor and I'm sorry, your agent and yourself before it even goes to publishing, because they have to feel like it's saleable, it's sellable, and the concept is strong enough to kind of shunt resources into trying to get a book deal for this thing, right? Because everything you put into now I'm thinking of my analogies are all over the place. Every time you put another rubber duck in the tub, the water's rising. You know what I mean? Everything you add to this is just making.
I love your analogies.
But you know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like, okay, what else you got? Okay, what else? And what else? What else? We only have so many hours in a day. Like whatever you're giving to me needs to be polished enough that they feel that it's worth querying, the other publisher people that they know, or editors.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, if it gets to that point, a lot of things just die on the vine. I'm sure if you ask a bunch of agented authors about stuff that never got made, they'd go, "Oh man, how long do you have to listen?" So they have to really be strong ideas, or at least hammered out to the point where they're malleable enough that a publisher can, remember what I said earlier, they want to put their hands in it. So if it's so ironclad that if they can't move it, I don't think they'd be too interested in that either. Hey, Jamar has this idea for this thing, but you can't touch it. Well, no thanks. You know what I'm saying? I mean, unless you're like Stephen King or something, and they just, open the Brinks truck up. But nobody's Stephen King here. I hope
That's
that
great.
answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank
Any other
you.
questions, guys? Tyler, no question from you?
Yeah, but um oh, yes. So I hear that when you work on when as a graphic novel is being developed, multiple people work on it because it takes a lot of work to make a graphic novel. So I'm curious to know what what did you directly do, and what other people may have done in the production of your
Kind of like what's the team up look like who,
yeah.
like how things were handled. It's a good question. So, and everybody's thing is different. A lot of this gets spelled out in your contract. I know people who they do every single stitch of their books themselves. And already we're talking about, and I just came from a run a school visit, so I'm very I hope I'm not talking down to anybody. Um, to be kind of like a cartoonist or an author illustrator, as they like to call it over there, you're kind of a unicorn anyway. Because, still, I think the publishers are used to dealing with a writer and dealing with an illustrator and kind of like moving things around between them to put a book together. But, the horse's mouth is right here. So it's like, oh, we have questions about the writing. You calling me? Oh, well, the art on page 52, you're calling me again. So there are people who they manage every facet of the production of their books. Sorry about my dog. So in my case, in the way my thing is structured, that I am responsible for writing the manuscript, also delivering the art. So that means pencils, inks, and all that stuff in between. And then I have a colorist, and also there's somebody on staff at Scholastic who letters my books. Um, I come from self-publishing world. I come from do it all yourself and it's 4 in the morning world, where I could do it all myself, but it would just kind of make my books come out later and later. You know what
Okay.
I'm saying? So, whatever you can kind of negotiate with them is probably what your deal will look like, but there's not one boilerplate deal. They may even see somebody, I don't know, I'm just making things up. There could even be a thing that's like, hey, we really love your storytelling, but your lettering sucks. We're gonna get a letterer for you. They won't say that to you. They'll just, you know what I'm saying? Because they just want to make the best looking books possible. It saves you time. It's somebody else's thing to deadline to hit, and it also makes you faster. But that's not everybody's deal all the time.
Okay, so you do everything up to the black and white stage?
Yeah, So
Okay.
I script it, I write it, I edit.
Oh
There's a
yeah,
lot of
and of course the writing, everything related
right,
to the
right.
yeah, okay, that's it.
The
Yeah,
the penciling and the inks, and then it gets colored
okay.
out of my studio, and then the word balloons and the dialogue I do a lot of placement
Oh,
for that, and then the letterer comes and like finishes it and makes sure everything is plotted the right way, and that the tail from the war balloon isn't stabbing Leon in the face. You know what I mean? All
oh.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, that's sound good. That's fascinating.
Thank you.
Do you have any creative direction when it comes to the coloring?
Yeah. So, very luckily for me, my colorist, whose name is Benaya Rosado, is fantastic. If you get to read my Leon books, the color pops. It's just as important as the story. But to me, color is. I think color is such a unsung part of a finished book. And we've worked together in the past, and she gets me. And that sounds cheesy to say like, oh, she gets, but I have a very specific color color theory, color lens. And I'm trying to kind of hit a bunch of different notes at the same time, and she really understands the way I do things. So um, I've seen, and this comes back from comic book world. I've seen part of the production line that somebody does magnificent pencils, and the inker just ruins the book. I've seen people do magnificent, art, final art, and the colorists didn't know what they were doing, and it looks like dog crap. You know what I'm saying? So every part of this is kind of like, I'm not a music guy, but there's a bunch of people playing on the stage, and somebody keeps playing a wrong note, and you're screwing up the whole song. So, but I'm really fortunate with me that with me, I can give the colorist notes, and even if we had somebody who I didn't know, I can, I still have the space to put in color notes on top of my pages. Like, this should be, it's sunset here, so think about blues and pinks and oranges. I never really have notes like, that's red, that's green, that's blue. It's more like a vibe. I'm I'm very like, that's really my thing. There is all about energy and just kind of getting the right notes. And I don't want to tell anybody how to do their job, but if we're all meeting in the same place, it works.
Okay, now I promised Jamar sort of hard stop around 8:30 because he's got his own podcast tonight, right?
Yeah, yeah, come by. But yeah,
You guys should come by. It's really
yeah.
it's anyway.
Go
So do
ahead.
we have a last question
Yeah,
before we
sure.
let him go?
Well, it's almost 8:30. Oh my goodness, where'd the time go? Yeah, yeah. I'll take two more questions. How's that?
Okay, two more questions.
Mhm.
Anybody? Okay, I got questions.
All right.
Oh, you said that your agent was introduced to you. How hard was it to get a yes from him or to get an agent? Or was it just the strength of the introduction?
Um, that's a good question. I was introduced. When somebody does something, I guess you would call it like an e-meet. Like, hey, I know this person. I know both of these people, and I'm going to send an email where both of you are on the same email. Hey, this guy's great. Hey, you're
Right.
going to love this guy. You guys talk. I'm going to back out of the room. And that was kind of the beginning of it. And I think it took a couple of years before there even started to be some sort of relationship there.
Oh, really? A couple of
Yeah.
years.
I
From the time
mean,
you got introduced to the time he signed you on. Wow.
yeah, yeah. And I remember during that period, and it's weird, and I'm glad that you have this community and you have, this group, these bodies of humans that are all kind of on the same path. Because, it's hard to kind of have these conversations with people who have no idea about this language you're talking about. So every time you say something to somebody and it sounds like a conflict, or, oh, well, I have to wait for this thing, or I emailed them, but it's been a couple of months, I haven't heard back. I'll just wait a little. What? You don't need them. Fire them. Or they don't know what they're doing. They should get, everybody's got these like hot takes on things they know nothing about. And I think probably one of the best things you can do is you always have to go with your gut. That's how I live my life. I go with my gut and I trust my instincts. And I also know that people are busy. You know what I'm saying? So if maybe even being patient is part of all this stuff. But like, all this stuff just takes time, and once you learn more about the publishing world, everything takes way more time than you think it will. So they live by a whole other calendar than the rest of the world. I don't know how it works. Like, they go on vacation like it's a weird time in August, and they just don't answer the phone anymore. You know what I mean? Or, oh, the publisher's in France at Angoulême. When he gets back in 4 weeks, then maybe he'll look at your manuscript. That's just how their world works, and you just have to learn how to play the game.
Okay. I got one more question unless somebody wants to take it.
I think Jill was going to say something.
I'll take
Okay.
it.
Okay,
Okay.
take it, Char. Go ahead.
So, did you have to do any other jobs before becoming a comic book writer or comic book artist and graphic novelist?
Yeah, I've had lots of jobs. So most of my adult life, I've always worked in higher education. So that means I've always worked at colleges as an administrator or support staff, or like a manager of people. Like I was the work study supervisor for the residence life, or I knew every key in the key box for the dorms.
Keep going.
Okay, so I think one thing that really worked out for me is that um, I was very well versed on doing a lot of things at the same time. I know, I guess you still call it multitasking, but 9 times out of 10, I was juggling a lot of chainsaws at the same time and doing my artwork at night or on the weekends, or not sleeping a lot just to get things in. When I was doing webcomics, my webcomic is due Sunday morning and it's Saturday night and I'm not finished. So I gotta stay up. You know what I'm saying? And go to work on Monday. So like all of that just kind of really gave me a good threshold on how to just get stuff done. And I was very fortunate enough after probably a little bit into me kind of completing this book deal that I was able to leave my job. And here's the secret part. I work harder than I did at my day job. It's pretty wild, but yeah, that's me.
Okay. I lied. I'm going to ask one more question.
Anything for you,
So
Ramon?
so let me so you say that because when you got the book deal, you're able to quit your day job, right?
It wasn't that fast, but yes.
And then now I'm assuming if you didn't get the book deal, you would have continued the day job, which is perfectly makes sense. But what would you have been your plan with the comics work with Leon the Defender? Would you continue self-publishing? Would you have continued promoting it? What would
Yeah.
have been the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I was making a lot of headway with what I was doing, and just what's part of my personality is just trying to figure out a way to like get in. Like I'm always trying to figure out a way to get in there somewhere. At some point, I was trying to have meetings with the director of the Philadelphia Free Library, like not the guy at the branch down the street, like the whole thing, and just trying to figure out ways to, talk to the superintendent of the school district, I kind of grew up on guerrilla marketing. And whatever the door that they present to you, there's got to be some windows in here too. If they won't let me in the door, I'm coming through the window. So I just would have been finessing another way of getting my work out into the world. And I've been doing this for almost 26 years, 20 something like years. So I wouldn't, I would have given up like on the 3rd of April 2020 if I didn't get a book deal.
Was Leon Defender of the Playground, was that always print on demand, or did you actually do an offset run?
No, it was all print on demand, and it came in different formats. At one point, it was a comic strip, and then after we did the Kickstarter, it was just straight print on demand. And I probably would just be making more. I'd probably do more Kickstarters at this point. And I have a lot of buddies who do Kickstarters like every 3 months, and it funds them, and their audience is growing just off the strength of their numbers from completing things, sending them out on time, and having great relationships with the readers. So there's always a way.
Awesome. So anyways, I'm gonna let you go,
Thank you
but
so
we're
much.
gonna talk more offline, I'm sure.
Yes, anything for you, Ramon. Thank you so much.
And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say thank you to everybody else in that logo over there in the corner. I don't know who that is. That G over there. Thanks, G.
Oh, that's Glenn. Glenn is another creator.
Very cool.
And we got to do a graphic novel, each one of us, through connections through this podcast.
Oh wow.
Really. So we were able to hook up with a publisher, and Glenn and I both did a book for that publisher about 2 years ago.
Very cool. It's fantastic.
But before I go, so next week we are going to have your editor, Jonah Newman, as a guest, because now he's a published author as well.
I'm so happy for Jonah. That's so great. Jonah's awesome.
And then in April we're having Enrica Jang, who's the publisher of Red Stylo Media, mostly horror comics.
Wow.
She's the sweetest lady. I am practically in love with her, as far as as far as publishers go.
Sure.
And then we're having Paul Kupperberg,
Oh wow.
also in April, and he's going to talk about what it was like from going to being a fan to being a creator, because there's that generation of creators who grew up as fans, and before that they were just regular guys who were trying to make a living, right? And then there's one more. Joan Hilty, who used to be from Nickelodeon.
Wow.
Is gonna come on now. She's part of Avatar. What's it called? It's called Avatar Studios. So it's also an animation app. And before her, we're having Hunter Goranson, who's now the president of Oni.
Wow.
So
Well, Ramon, you got a bunch of monsters coming in. That's
yeah.
amazing.
I mean, you know what it is? It's like when you get one monster, you invite another monster because they say, "Oh, that monster! It's on the podcast. I gotta get on it too."
We have a monster party. I love it. Yeah.
And when years ago we got Neil Adams on here, and I got a bunch of people signed on while we had him on the list. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. Wow.
I can't wait to see you at Phillipsburg.
Phillipsburg. Don't go to Virginia. You go to New Jersey.
Go to Virginia, right? And guys, by the way, and Jonas talk is live because he wants to sell books. At the event.
I think he's got a question.
I just wanted to say, can you share your website and social media if possible so we can follow you?
Sure, I'll put it in the chat. It's pretty simple. So it's just jamarnicholas.com, and then on Insta it's Jamar_Nicholas. If I spell it wrong, don't be mad. Cartoonist.
Okay.
On Insta, and then if you want to check out my podcast, it's Pencil to Pencil. I'll do the whole thing. It's on youtube.com. Pencil to Pencil, which is a creative podcast, a live stream, and we have guests on. We just had Larry Stroman and Todd Johnson, who created Tribe in the '90s. We were on last night. We're gonna have Tony Moore from The Walking Dead on next Wednesday.
I saw the Brian Lee O'Malley episode. That was
really yeah, Miles a good friend of mine. It's fantastic. We just talk shop, and
you introduced me to him.
Yeah, and in between these, I do this thing called Coffee Break with JN, where at 9 o'clock I'm going to be on that channel drinking a cup of coffee and running my mouth. It's a really big.
If you have more questions, get on that thing. You can text him the questions.
Yeah, it's very friendly, and we have a great community there. You'll love it.
Okay, my friend, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jamar. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Keep creating. I have a motto. It is nothing is impossible. I believe that to be true.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. I'll see you guys soon.
Take care.
Thanks. Good night.